I tried as a new way. I'm gonna show you the tricks I know. Not getting tired of talking, so I made up a show right now. It's time that you made your mind on. I know it can sound a little bit strange. Everybody is talking. You need someone ready to change. I will fight like no other every day. I won't stop like the others. I will stay, 'cause it's the right time. I'm feeling alright. I'm flying higher. I'm ready to scream right now. It's better. Don't miss any highlight. There's something you may like. Once I'm ready to fly. It's better. I'll tell her to do it right. So I'll tell her to do it right. It's better. We're feeling alright. We're flying higher. We're gonna win tonight. We're here just for the audience. We're gonna show what you're going through. We wanna find you the perfect drone. There's no one else who can help you out. It's time that you made your mind up. I know it can sound a little bit strange. Everybody is talking. You need someone ready to change. I will fight like no other every day. I won't stop like the others. I will stay, 'cause it's the right time. I'm feeling alright. I'm flying higher. I'm ready to scream right now. It's better. Don't miss any highlight. There's something you may like. Once I'm ready to fly. I'll tell her to do it right. So I'll tell her to do it right. It's better. We're feeling alright. We're flying higher. Gonna win tonight. It's
The Geeksvana theme tune is over. That means it is time for Geeksvana Live. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. I've been looking forward to this one. We've got some good information for you this evening. Whenever people talk about sweeping changes or potential sweeping changes or changes to regulations, we always think, this could be a bad thing. And, you know, I would certainly say we all need to take a moment just to look at the fact that, in my opinion, the current UK drone rules are actually fairly positive in terms of the previous rules, certainly for hobbyists and certainly for sub 250 gram flyers, being able to be into congested areas, etc. And of course, we have just gone through public consultation where the CAA at least have certainly listened to the drone hobby and industry. So, you know, it could turn out to be good. Who knows, you know. But today on Geeksvana Live, we're going to be talking about the UK drone rules and the potential that we could again be about to move into another period of change, especially for users of the open category specifically. Now, recently, the UK CAA have released CAP 2367, which was titled Consultation Response, which was actually this one. Let me just bring that up on screen whilst I'm doing this part. Consultation Response, extending the provisions for legacy and transitional category UAS. Now, last week I ran through that document in detail. So if you want to know more about that topic, you can rewatch the video on Geeksvana right now. Overall, in terms of the extension itself, I think it was good news for the UK drone world. So today, we're not going to be rehashing those points or going through that data again, because we've done that. Instead, I want to look at some of the finer detail within the consultation, which could have more of, in my view, a far-reaching impact on the rules many of us actually fly under. Now, just a quick note to anyone that's watching the replay to this show. Hi, replay watchers. Do please comment below as well with your thoughts on each of the sections we discussed tonight. Although you won't be able to take part in the live chat, I will be reading the responses and actually responding responding to all of your comments as they come in. So if you're watching the replay, get commenting below for each of these sections. I recently sat down with Callum Holland, who very kindly joined us on Geeksvana from the UK CAA RPAS Policy Team. So this is actually one of the people who ran the public consultation and created the recommendations that are now with the Department for Transport in terms of the C-label drone area side of things. So rather than release this as a straight interview, as a normal video, as I normally would on the channel, I wanted instead to play out the interview in clips on this live show, so we can look at the responses and see where we as a community feel it might be going. I think it will be a good exercise for us to talk about it. So I am going to be looking into the chat. So pretty much everything that you're hearing tonight, if you have comments on the specific sections, do let me know, because this is going to be a little bit more of an interactive show than those that we've had recently. It will include me offering my opinion, so that's something which I'm certainly going to be doing. So let's just very quickly, let's say hi to people in the chat, and then we'll jump into the main topic this evening. Thank you very much for everyone for joining us this evening. It is a warm one down here in the south of the UK, here in Surrey, just outside London. It is probably felt closer and more sort of humid than it has done in recent weeks, actually, despite the temperature being around 26, 27, so not even in the 30s as we hit last week. But there you go. How much more stereotypically British can I be by talking about the weather? Chuck Kovaction, great to see you. Bob, hi. Fiona Anderson, good to see you. It was good to see a few new names in the chat as well. Johnny DRC, Jeff Allen, hi. Drone Shots, Jody, good to see you. Gandlers, Kayaking Graham tells us hello from a cloudy, rainy Scotland. Steve Page, hi from Edinburgh. Hi, Steve. Good to see you. And all of our members there as well. Airless Mean, the Flyby guys, our senior moderator, Andy Cortez as well. But thank you guys for everybody hopping in. I really do appreciate it. 41 degrees centigrade here, says Johnny DRC. Crazy, absolutely crazy. But I know you are over somewhere perhaps you would expect heat a lot of the time. There's something about UK heat. Don't get me started. It's not what we're talking about tonight. It's not what we're talking about. Don't get me started. But there's something about it's either too cold or too hot. But anyway, there we go. And DJ Audits, good to see you as well. Hope you are well, sir. So, during the recent press releases and communications that have been put out by the CAA, there was mention of a wider public consultation coming. There was a podcast that Jonathan Nicholson from the CAA put out where he had Callum on as well. And they talked about the fact that there is I think it's something like a 90-page consultation coming regarding the wider drone operations in the open category. Now, you hear open category talked about quite a lot. For those new to the topic or unsure, the open category is where you probably fly your drones. We're talking about the A1, A2 and A3 airspace subcategories. If you fly your Mini 2, Mini 3 drone or in congested areas, etc., you're flying in the A1 airspace in the open category. If you fly with an A2 CofC and you've got your Air 2S, etc., you are still flying in the open category. So it's an important section, and it's interesting that it's specifically the open category that they're actually going to be looking at next. There was also discussion surrounding not only delaying the implementation of the drone class marking system, but also, and I'm going to quote from the opening line of the actual recommendations here. I'll pull it up so everybody can see it. This will form part of a larger investigation into the current UAS open category regulatory framework and what is most suitable for the United Kingdom. And of course, that they've also mentioned here the class marking scheme should be reevaluated. So effectively what we're looking at here is quite a significant change that's possible, frankly. So there's a big potential for significant changes to UK drone rules within a relatively short period of time after adopting the EU rules with a few tweaks. Not only are the CAA going to investigate potential changes to the open category in general, but keep in mind, if we do see a review of the drone class marking system, something that the open category drone use is pretty much built around, the whole A1, A2, A3 subcategories and the C0 to C4 drones, then that could actually be something which is going to have potentially significant knock-on effects. If you remember when the UK was part of the EU, remember all that time ago, we were on course to adopt the full EASA regulation changes and stay under EASA. In fact, even once Brexit was confirmed, it was only at relatively short notice, at a late stage, it was actually announced by the DFT that the UK would be leaving EASA as well, and would adopt a version of the EU rules, which is what we've currently got in place at the moment, but they are UK specific. Now, although much of the language within the existing rules we follow in the UK is similar to the EASA member states across Europe, it's a completely different system. Hence, your drone registration, your UK A2 CofC, your GVC are not valid in the EU in the EASA states, and of course vice versa. So it could make sense that perhaps there are further changes we could make to the existing rules to suit the use of drones here in the UK. As an industry, during the COVID years, finding its feet under the new regulatory system which was put into place, the UK drone industry has innovated, and we do lead the world in some of the exciting projects and leaps forward the commercial sector has made. This proposed review, however, will be focused, as I've been saying, on the open category. So it will be looking at recreational or hobbyist flight, as well as the lower end commercial operations. Open category flights include the worlds of GPS camera drones and FPV and the wider RC hobby. So it will be quite a significant change. So time for our first clip from my interview with the CAA. Here I discuss with Callum the positive response from the drone community to the CAA recommendations in terms of the C labels being moved.
Preconceived.
Hi, Callum, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us again on Geeks Varna. It was great to chat with you last time, and there's lots of exciting things happening within the drone world here in the UK. So it's great to have you back on to talk about this. Now, we are, of course, today talking about the legacy transition period, public consultation, response and recommendations. Nothing's changed. We're still in the current situation, but we are now at the point where we have a recommendation. And I think a lot of people have felt very positive by the fact that the CAA have listened to the stakeholders.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have. We went into this with no preconceived notions of what a final opinion to the DFT would look like. I'm sure we all internally had our own personal thoughts. Something you can't not do or not have. We were overwhelmed, I think, by the sheer number of resources from a community engagement standpoint. It felt good to us to be able to hear from the community at that scale. I don't think it's something we've had before, and I don't want to go over old ground. It was pivotal in shaping our opinion to the DFT, all of those 4,500 and I believe 6 responses.
People say this, that regulators don't listen, and it can be something, because of course regulators don't just have the stakeholders to consider, they have the general public, they have security concerns, there's all sorts of, there are hundreds of different things which I realise go into this side of things. So to have both the stakeholders, so everybody from recreational drone users all the way through to future flight participants, etc., and the CAA on the same sheet it's great to see.
Yeah, it was really good to see that alignment. You raise a really important point, and I know it will be. I don't want it read into too much, but the overall objective of the CAA is safety. That's our overarching objective, and if something in this consultation went against some safety principle, then our recommendation would have been different. I think it's just really important to remember that. We are happy, of course, that everything aligned and we were able to voice the community's feedback to the Department of Transport, because we didn't identify any sufficient safety risks that would suggest we had to do something otherwise. So, not to be read into, but for future consultations, we're really keen to continue this mechanism of feedback and capturing as much feedback as possible to drive that opinion. But our overarching job here as a CAA is safety. So this isn't to say that every future consultation will align completely with what the community want. Obviously, if there's opportunity to, then it will.
So interesting there from the point of view of the CAA themselves are obviously fairly happy with the fact that the opinions did align, but they are warning that obviously that won't always happen because they are safety led. So that's an interesting one. Thank you just very quickly to our members, our channel members. If you're a channel member, you actually get special emojis. One of which we have got is a microphone with Mike in capital letters and exclamation marks, because there's always an audio issue. It wouldn't be Geeks File Live without an audio issue of some kind. I'm the only person in the studio this evening. The clips are recorded and I still managed to have one. So thank you very much, guys, for spamming that in the chat. I was able to fix that problem very quickly. So as I say, all pretty straightforward there. Up next, I asked Callum about the re-evaluation of the class marking system. So this is one of the more interesting parts where this subject starts to get a little bit deeper, and what this might look like. Few questions, and some of our viewers and myself spotted a few things in the recommendations which will be good just to take a sort of deeper dive on, if that's okay. And the first one is, what in the CAA policy team view does re-evaluation of class marking scheme look like and evolve with? What kind of potential outcomes do you expect from that as well? So, because of course you've said that you want to reevaluate it, and that's sort of pricked quite a few ears in the industry, especially to say, okay, well, what's happening there? What in the policy team's view does that actually look like?
Yeah, I mean, it is what it says on the tin. As part of this consultation, we haven't just listened to the feedback in terms of what's relevant to this specific task, this extension. We've listened to the feedback for what the community is generally saying, and also our own internal expertise and what industry more generally is telling us. And we think now, as a result of departing the European Union and having this legislative framework that we have taken control of ourselves, there is scope to see if there's opportunity to improve it for the United Kingdom alone. And that's exactly it. It's an exercise that hasn't yet been done. We're only a year or two into this new framework, and we've seen it as an opportunity to go, right, let's stop, let's reflect. Is this the right thing for the community? If it is, what does it look like? If it isn't, what needs to be done differently? That addresses the industry's concerns, the community's concerns, but also the safety concerns as well. So at the moment, it's nothing more than that.
Okay, excellent. And the potential outcomes from that kind of thing. I mean, could we see a situation where we have a completely different system to EASA, so that, for instance, it doesn't actually matter what C marking it has on the drone, that it's everything under 800 grams is a C2, or this is that. Is every outcome possible?
Yeah, it would be wrong during the discovery phase to take any potential outcome off the table immediately. So every outcome is on the table, up for discussion, and there'll be consultations in the future on this, but every option is currently being considered.
Interesting there. So this to me could be the first significant sign of change coming to the UK drone rules, to reevaluate the class marking system that we've all been spending this much time getting used to. There's quite a few videos I'll have to take down on my channel for a start. Would have far-reaching impact on the open category. In terms of the outcome, apparently the table is open, so it'll be interesting. Let me know in the live chat whether or not you have embraced the C label system, the C0 to C4, whether you think it should be dropped and we should just go by weights. So anything that's under 250 can have the current rules. Anything under 700 can be this, and etc. I mean, how do you think that re-evaluation should happen? Obviously, you're going to get your opportunity, so it's good to think about it now when the public consultation comes further down the line, once we get past this period, once this regulatory change happens in itself. So it's going to be an interesting one, really. I'll have more to say in general on this and some of the other topics a little bit later on, because I want to play a few more of these clips out first. But next we're going to talk about what that word indefinite means in terms of the legacy extension. The word indefinite has been used previously, obviously, with the 250 gram, sub 250 gram drone side of things. And here again, we have the situation where we're sort of in an indefinite view as far as essentially removing the legacy and transition periods. Is there any known period of time that the class marking review and implementation will take place?
So it forms part of the previous question around the overall assessment of class marking and perhaps an opportunity to simplify it and improve it potentially. So really it comes down to that. We need to do that assessment on what's best for the UK and then implement it as soon as reasonably practicable. None of us like delay. We all like getting on with the job. We really need to do that first, though. And that's really the nuance of the indefinite wording in our proposal. It gives us that time. It gives us that scope. It gives us that opportunity to primarily consult with the community and have a good period of consultation with the community as well. So when we do it, it's done properly. It's not done fast.
Yes, excellent. Which is again, I think we will all be pleased once that process is over, because of course we'll have something that hopefully suits the UK system, and it has been well thought out. Is there any plans to distance yourselves as far as a regulator from the C labelling system, that type of thing, as far as removing it from the drone code whilst the whole thing's under evaluation? Because obviously at the moment a new user will go on to the drone code and will see, you know, the C labelling very clearly explained, and sort of it's very much part of that framework. And indeed a lot of the questions we get from new drone flyers surrounds confusion on that side of things. Is this something that CAA will keep within their text whilst the review's going on?
Yes, we absolutely acknowledge the potential that this can cause confusion, especially for those just getting into the industry perhaps. That will form part of the initial review into this overall piece around the open category and the class marking scheme. So that's something that we've kind of got a structure of what we think, what questions need answering first, and that part very much comes at the forefront in order to potentially remove some ambiguity moving forward.
So again, here I felt like Callum from the RPAS Policy Team at the CAA was very careful to ensure that we're aware that changes could be coming to the C label system rather than just a delay, as we were previously focusing on. Now, clearly, a regulator is unlikely, in my opinion, my personal opinion, to run a re-evaluation when the intention is to make no changes. What these changes could form is something we're obviously going to have the opportunity to comment on in a further future public consultation, which is exciting, especially as they've listened to us on this one. But to me, it's very interesting as, again, the class marking system, the C labels, as we call them, are so central to the drone rules. Just very quickly, catch up with anybody asking questions in the chat or making comments. Old Tech Man, I did notice yours. Your comment was, Dunno, still annoyed that I'm going to have to spend additional money just to bin my legacy Mini to get a new Mini with a C marking. Well, in actual fact, the legacy sub 250 camera drones will actually be able to carry on flying indefinitely with the current benefits. So you won't actually, the sub 250, so the Nano Pluses and the Mini 3s, Mini 2s, Mini SE, which is a great drone, you won't actually have to repurchase that one as things stand, because that is going to be going on indefinitely, which is actually what's happening to sub 250 grams under these proposed changes is a question which I will come on to in the interview with Callum very soon. Doc Murdoch, Chris, hi, great to see you. Doc Murdoch FPV, at least they're looking forward and listening to the flyers, unlike the FAA here. I have to give hats off, the fact that Callum's come along again for this interview. It's his second time on the channel so far. We've had the CAA on Geeksvana quite a few times now since I first met them in person back in late last year at the DroneX conference. And, again, they're putting out podcasts regularly now. They've started a new podcast series, which you can find on the CAA Twitter feed. And they are coming on more channels. They're coming out. They're wanting to talk and actually engage with the drone community, all stakeholders in the drone community. So I do have to congratulate them for that. I do agree with you. Fly Sky Drones, Tony, hi, good to see you. Would C labelling just get dumped like most things the government do? They keep changing their minds. Well, I think that there's a small factor of the fact that obviously Brexit happened. We were going to stay in EASA, then we weren't, and we're not going to be able to come up with dramatically different rules very, very quickly with COVID, everything else going on. So the EU rules were adopted. This is just my take on it. And now we're finding that there are actually sections to it, like the sub 250 gram rule, which is actually the indefinite side of things, and the whole way that we measure takeoff mass, etc., is different here to the EU slightly. And there might actually be room for other rules to change, which, as I said at the beginning, could actually be more beneficial benefit and more good than bad, frankly. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. Lester from above, hi, good to see you. To be honest, if all the change goes against drones I own, there's a problem. I bought them all and was perfectly legal to fly at the time for keeps. Yes. We will move on to that section next, actually, because there is interesting feedback in terms of there seems to be more, in my opinion, from the conversations that I'm having and from these interviews, there seems to be more appetite to allow the existing drones time to phase out rather than just being this harsh border of, the Mavic 3 that you bought this year can't be flown next year, but we'll come on to that. So one of the points there I brought up at the end was in terms of removing the C label system from the drone code, which I personally think is quite important. It needs to happen, in my opinion, quite soon, as the indefinite delay to the system is confirmed by the DFT and Parliament. So as soon as we have that in place, I think we need to remove that from the drone code, frankly. The confusion it already brings is bad enough. I already have lots of people asking me, what is a C label, is this, is that, etc. But we could easily see a situation where the EASA states release their C label drone system sooner than the UK. So there is no intended EASA review of C label drones. They've set a new firm date for their C labels to be in place. So we really obviously want to avoid a situation where the UK drone code states you can use C label drones. Such drones get released for the European market for EASA states, but you actually can't use those here in the UK. So that situation would obviously be very confusing for consumers. I'm sure the CAA will make some changes before that happens. But until we have more certainty, I don't think there should be any more mention of it in the drone code at all, frankly. So up next, I discussed with Callum from the CAA RPAS Policy Team the proposed review of the open category and therefore the rules that most of us fly our drones over. So this is the more general review. Are you able to elaborate on something? And this is something which I picked up on within the consultation, and I felt like, okay, is there a Trojan horse in here somewhere? Have we found a huge story here where there is going to be a larger investigation into current UAS use within the open category? Does this mean we've got potentially more significant changes to come to the base regulations?
Yeah, so absolutely not a Trojan horse, and we are very much about transparency and working with the community. There's a line there within the consultation, I can't remember the specifics of it, but there's an opportunity for a complete reevaluation here of the open category. Because a very big part of the open category regulation was the class marking scheme. So we're taking a step back, we're doing what will be a very difficult job, but one that needs doing, and having an overall look at the open category. Is there an opportunity for simplification? Is there an opportunity to increase safety for the community and for everybody else? And I think that's something that's only right and proper if we're going to be looking at class marking schemes anyway.
Yes, so essentially, if you do review and the review outcome is a different system for class marking, whether that's no class marking or however, or staying the same, that could obviously have impact on the rest of the regulation, because as you say, everything else is kind of built off that. Your A2 CofC, you're very much looking forward to C2 labeled drones. If there aren't C2 labeled drones in the same way, how does that impact everything? So it's really the ripple effect, essentially, and that gives you an opportunity, if you're changing a core item, to look at everything, to say, okay, does everything else still suit and still fit around that central class marking system?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, that makes complete sense. Thank you. It was an important subject to cover, because, as I say, you think, are they trying to sneak something through there that actually?
There's nothing sneaky going on, I can assure you of that.
Excellent. That sounds good. So nothing sneaky going on from the CAA with the mention of a review of the open category in this recommendation. So that's reassuring to hear. So this is an opportunity for a complete review of the open category. I do note, and I think you should also note, the discussion of the term increasing safety in there. Again, in my opinion, a regulator would not discuss a review in the first couple of lines of its recommendation to government if they're not seeking some form of change. I would walk that on slightly, that a regulator who's only just recently implemented pretty sweeping changes to the drone rules and taken a lot of time and effort to get those understood would not look to upset the cart with a tweak here or there. So we could be looking at some significant changes ahead. we'll have to wait and see, though, from that point of view. Next up, I discussed with Callum the line in the recommendations that look to ensure, because it actually does state in this recommendation, which I'll pull up again, that there is. They're looking to ensure the fact that we're going to be able to use our legacy drones beyond the period where it's not going to be such a harsh cutoff, essentially, so that we're going to have sea-label drones fully available before the next transition stage is even thought about, essentially, which I know is being raised in the chat by Nick Harborne, for instance, saying that he's not going to be happy if you can't fly his Mavic 3. Well, I don't think, from what we've been told, that that's necessarily going to be a problem. But let's take a listen to the next part of the interview. The transitional period is going to be reintroduced when class marked UAS are on the open market, which sounds fantastic. Recommendation reads itself: this would ensure the regulated community has a suitable amount of time to naturally phase out older UAS. What kind of period does the CAA think this would form in terms of, let's say I buy a Mavic 3 at the end of this year, and that's exactly when the new C1 rated Mavic 3 comes out, just after. How long a period do you think I would have to use my older legacy Mavic 3 under any kind of new transition period?
Sure. Well, it's not currently defined. What the original transitional period was 2 years. And we believe that the spirit of that 2 years was to allow for the adoption and retirement of new and old aircraft, respectively. I think we would see something similar if we get to that point. I think the important thing to remember here is this consultation, this opinion to DFT, is in order to mitigate something that's going to happen on the 1st of January if we don't. And we have to build in provisions for all potential outcomes. There's potential outcomes of a complete reevaluation of the class marking scheme, and adaptation of it, or continue business as usual and actually move forward with it. So our proposal, our opinion to DFT, takes care of all of those potential outcomes. And one of them is, if it's business as usual and we do implement class marking schemes as they currently exist, well, it's to provide protection, really, to the end user, to the consumer, that you will have a substantial transitional period at the point you have an opportunity to purchase class marked UAS, and not before. So okay. I can't say. I would expect 2 years or beyond.
Okay, excellent. So it's essentially the insurance part of it, where it says this would ensure the regulated community has a suitable amount of time to naturally phase out older UAS. The way the CAA are recommending that happens is by not implementing a new transitional period until the class marking drones, whatever they end up looking like, are actually freely available and on the market, because then you can say you now have this alternative to purchase. So actually, we're going to say we have and we won't put a date on it because it's impossible at this stage. But then with the period that we have now until this happens, and then that's quite a lengthy period for anybody that's thinking about upgrading or buying new drones in the next 6 to 12 months. They're going to have a decent amount of time with that drone. Absolutely,
and that's one of the areas in which our opinion, I hope, mitigate some of the concern for the community, and that's around uncertainty.
Yes,
uncertainty for recreational operators and commercial operators to make purchasing decisions, and we completely understand it. And that provision there was really built in to hopefully mitigate some of that concern.
Okay, so interesting there. Quite a lot to unpack, but essentially the main highlight that I think we could take there from that is that we are looking at a situation, and this has been the conversations, this also follows in line with the conversations that I've been having with the CAA as far as what the intention of the original transition period was and everything else like that as well, that they're not looking to have a situation where your brand new Mavic 3 can no longer be flown in the A2 airspace purely because suddenly there's a C1 version out, so you must now only fly that one. The new transitional, new legacy period will only start and will only be considered and will only be looked to be put into place once C-label drones, whatever form they take after the review of the C labels, actually are on the market. So we're talking about a situation of, let's say they came out, in January of next year, which obviously they're not going to. It's going to be a longer period than that. But let's say we had suddenly a C1 Mavic 3. Then I would expect, from what they're telling me, from my interpretation, you would then expect a transitional legacy period to be put into place following that, which will give you a good couple of years at least to be able to use your existing drones before you have to actually move across. Obviously, the new drones, the C1s, are going to have benefits. Your non-C1 rated Mavic 3 will still have to stay 50 meters away from people with an A2 CofC, but the one with the C1, you only have to read the manual and register it, etc. And then you can have zero separation of people with the one-to-one rule and no intentional flights over. So there's still going to be some benefits. So I can still see people wanting to hop across to them at some stage. It would be interesting to see how it affects the next releases of DJI drones, whether people still hold off, or the fact that we've now got probably quite a few years before we actually see a legacy period end and you being forced across into the new drones, whether or not people would look to actually purchase new drones beyond that. In the chat here, three bad mice, great username. In my opinion, there are quite a few opportunities here. I'm personally super impressed that the CAA are doing this. Also worth keeping in mind, the CAA and the government aren't the same thing. Exactly. Hence the recommendations that have gone forward to the DFT are just that. So it's going to be interesting, and I think that will also be a little bit of a test from the point of view to see how the recommendations from the CAA just regarding the extension of the legacy and transition periods go down with government and go through Parliament in terms of what kind of condition it comes back as legislation, to see if there's anything there, frankly. Rooney G Music, hi, good to see you. Hope you're well. Sean, I think it should be a minimum of 5 years once the C-label drones become available. And I know they had, the answers to the public consultation, the beyond 24 months was by far the most popular, frankly. So, which I don't think there's anything which is surprising there. Stu B, hi, good to see you. Are we not driving ourselves into creating rules for no reason at all? Keep the rules as basic as possible, and grading drones is nonsense and very much a waste of time and money. Well, there's going to be a public consultation, so we're going to be able to put our views forward on this. And it feels to me, I don't know how you felt with this, the interview clips and the press releases that have been put out by the CAA. It feels to me that's not that they're not happy with, but they feel that there is a reason to reevaluate the class marking system and that we could see changes there. It just feels that way to me personally. So up next, we covered the sub 250 gram drone area. And again, this is where full hats off to Callum for the fact that he is able to answer these questions that you can't really give answers to yet, because of course they are the regulator, they're not the legislator as such. But of course, the regulator's opinion is very, very important. Somebody did actually ask in the chat, does Callum actually have a drone? And yes, actually Callum, who was a fairly recent hire at the CAA with the RPAS Policy Team, is extremely experienced within the drone industry and a drone flyer himself. He's literally dealt with drones, everything from your minis and mini twos all the way through to the professional side of things, with very high-end jobs in the private sector as well. He's I think it's good to have somebody, and I think the way he talks and the way that he's able to come to these interviews and rattle off the policy and talk confidently about drones shows that the CAA, in my opinion, are putting the right people on the RPAS policy team, in terms of people that actually know what they're talking about as such. So up next, as I say, we talked about the all-important sub 250 gram drone area. I knew I wasn't going to get a particularly straight answer because they can't answer it if they're reevaluating the open category, but I felt like you really wouldn't have forgiven me if I didn't ask. The next area of conversation is surrounding sub 250 gram drones. And there are many, many users out there, many recreational users as well, who take a very sharp breath in whenever they see changes coming to drone regulations. And of course, our very much coveted and our very much enjoyed sub 250 gram drone benefits, as I call them, here in the UK. Are there any plans within any of the investigations to review that side of things?
So the entire open category is up for assessment. That there are currently absolutely no plans whatsoever substantively to make any changes to current regulation within the open category, with notwithstanding sub 250, the whole breadth of it. So the message is it's very much business as usual.
So no plans to make any changes, although of course it's impossible to answer. So thank you, Callum, for attempting to answer an impossible question, frankly, when a review of the entire open category is intended. But again, it's an interesting question to ask. It's one I've asked a few times behind the scenes as well in my conversations. And I don't feel, whether you're talking about enforcement, legislation, or regulator, the conversations I have in those three spaces, I don't feel an appetite to stop the sub 250 benefits. I just don't feel that they feel there's any kind of significant issue there. If anything, as I'm about to come on and say with my opinion on this, I think we're proving ourselves to be a safe and reliable hobby, frankly. So as I say, no plans for any changes there. It's important as well, actually, just want to mention thank you to Callum. Thanks as well to Jonathan Nicholson from the CAA for his help putting this interview together. I really appreciate all of his support. And he's been very key in terms of getting messages out through Geeksvana. So what could these changes be? What do you want these changes to be? I mean, they're obviously going to be good and bad, I would say, as anything really happens with these things. If they're focused on safety, then in my opinion, surely the changes should mainly, the vast majority, be positive only. The open category in its short life has proven itself to be safe, in my opinion, and should have built some trust with both the regulator, government, and the enforcement side of things. Despite the BV loss obsession, and I know that's in the chat there, and it's great because we're going to be able to have this conversation, and the behaviour of some fringe elements, I think that overall our use of hobby flight particularly, and the lower end commercial flight in the open category has been responsible, frankly. So I would hope that the changes are mainly going to be positive, but again, we're going to have to wait and see from that point of view. If we're looking at a review based on creating a more UK-focused version of the current rules, then that should hopefully be, again, a positive thing to help suit consumers and the industry as a whole. So what would you like to see change? If, again, live chat, I'm going to go back through and read everybody's comments. We're going to do a little sort of mop-up live show in a couple of weeks to look at what people feel. If you're watching the replay, do make sure that you put your comments below as well. For me, what I would like to see is the sub 250 gram benefits continue, and perhaps extend those a little to allow for people to add safety items such as strobe lights, etc., to their drones without tipping it over the weight limit. I think there would be, or certainly, you know, the base drone should be sub 250 minus add-ons. And those add-ons could be listed perhaps, rather than having to put it up to 300 grams or 350 grams or something. Because to me, drones like the Mini 3 and the Nano Plus are much closer to that 250 gram limit now than previous models. And I sense concern when someone wants to put a strobe light to make it a bit safer as far as visual line of sight and also, of course, flying at night and that type of thing, that they have a little bit of hesitancy about putting those on the newer ones, because we don't have the few grams that we used to have with the Mini 2, certainly. So yeah, I think that would be a good one to do. This one's slightly more controversial in the wider terms, because I think it might be an opportunity to bring the FPV community into the UK drone rules fold and support the future of that part of the hobby and profession with some specialist rules, perhaps. I always state that the FPV rules are almost end up being thrown away, essentially, as the first part of the average user's experience is the spotter rule. And of course, so many people, although I agree with the spotter rule, I think it's important for safety as well, but I also think there's room for something like a form of maybe shielded operations to become something we embrace in the UK. This would be perhaps where FPV pilots could fly with goggles on and no spotter when there are natural boundaries to the field, and flying in and below the natural boundaries of trees and that type of thing. It's something I'm open to being persuaded on either way, frankly, and that's the good thing about the fact that we're going to get a public consultation. But I think it's an important opportunity, a great opportunity, to support an important part of the hobby with FPV, and I think we need to at least see the regulator engaging in the public consultation on that side of things and see if we can find some middle ground. I would say that there's surely a set of FPV rules that will then be embraced and supported by users is better than the existing situation of the rule, the number one rule, basically being ignored by the majority of FPV flyers. Now, I would also state that overall, I do actually have a lot of trust in the existing CAA team, certainly the members that I've been dealing with, who in my view, they don't want to spell out every single little rule. That's certainly been emphasised to me, and make it impossible to fly. That's why there almost needs to be some grey areas in interpretation in these rules, because common sense and reasonable assessment of the situation you're actually flying in is also important. So it doesn't mean I'm not concerned, because of course there's plenty of negative forces out there, and the CAA are not the legislator, they're not Parliament, they're not the government, and the use of drones can have a negative impact with all sorts of fake stories and real stories out there from the general public. So it's going to be an interesting one to see. Just very quickly catch up on the chat here before we move on to the final clip. Personally, everyone should be at least A2 CofC qualified to fly, but then it should cover any drone he owns. Yeah, it's an interesting one there, Nick Harborne. Thank you for that. I have said that before. When I first took the A2 CofC, I did actually say that I wondered if it should be the flyer ID almost, from the point of view not having to pay the higher level, but I think almost that kind of training should be the base training. So I don't disagree with you there. PD Tech, hi, great to see you. Hope you're very well. One of our regular viewers. 120 meters is plenty for a drone. Don't see much point flying any higher. And I'm rarely at 120 meters, to be fair, because most of the interesting stuff to film is down here. So yes, exactly, Barry P. 249 gram equals safe, 251 gram equals killer drone. And they have to put that limit somewhere. But I think some allowances so that we can have add-ons and that type of thing, which many of those add-ons actually make the drone safer for use as well, I think could be a good thing. And Barry P, I would prefer to be hit by my Mini 3 Pro than the Mavic 3, exactly. But the good thing is, hopefully we are going to be able to have this conversation in the public consultation with the CAA, and hopefully it'll be listened to as much. You know, we may all be surprised and find that we are again, as stakeholders, as industry and recreational flyers, we are again aligned with the CAA. It's happened recently, so it could happen again. Dog Whistle Sharam, you can't even add a bright orange skin to a Mini 3 without making it over the weight limit. For sure, making it more visible is important for safety. Yeah, exactly. So I don't think that would be something which would be... again, as long as it's worded correctly, you could still have it at 250 plus add-ons or something like that. I think that would be a simple way of doing it. So 107 drones, do you think ducted propellers may become a requirement? It isn't really something that we've had too much discussion of. It will be interesting to see, because of course this will be the first review we've had since things like remote ID and the class system of drones for flying over people in the United States with the FAA has come out. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any looking over the pond at that. Sorry, very cliche thing to call it the pond, but there we go. It'll be interesting to see whether that comes into things or not. And of course, I think with the open category, you'll see with my next videos on Beyond Visual Line of Sight, following up from our release this week on that subject, that I think remote ID is obviously going to be part of the potential of opening up Beyond Visual Line of Sight. It's going to be an important part of it. So I'm certain that remote ID will rear its head in any kind of review of the open category there as well. And Lee, can the CAA look at the UK being able to approve the longer flight batteries for the Mini 3 Pro? I've been asked about this by a few people, because obviously when the Mini 3 Pro came out, we managed to get a statement from DJI and confirmed that it was actually the EU rule changes that wouldn't have actually been quite the same in the UK anyway, that were preventing them from being sold in the UK. We have reached out to DJI to say, look, this is happening. If we get a formal legislation change and it becomes indefinite, does that mean that the batteries will be released here in the UK? I see no reason why not. That's purely a DJI decision and nothing to do with the regulator or legislators in this country. That's DJI wanting to ensure that the maximum takeoff mass of the mini drones in the EU, the ones that are sold in the EU directly, are not above the 250, so they don't lose that future C0 status, frankly. And the Goose Rider says, whatever happens, you can guarantee that CAA will always make things more complicated than they actually are, just like DJI with the Fly Safe website asking you to custom unlock near a geofence. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's one of the challenges that I have seen in terms of the work we have done with those that enforce the rules and those that legislate and regulate. these things have to be a blanket coverage. They can't have specific, okay, you've been flying drones for 15, 20 years, you're extremely, you know, model RCs, and then 5-10 years of drones, you're extremely qualified, you can do this. But actually the person next to you who's just picked one up from Argos can only do this. It's very difficult to legislate like that. So it has to be a blanket. So it can come across as complex sometimes. Clocks, I can't remember, is the Mini 3 less 250 grams with the larger batteries, or does that take it slightly? It does take it over. I think it takes it actually over 40 grams with the longer battery clocked. Hope you're well. Good to see you as well. And yes, as Insane DJ UK, there you go. It took me a while to get my head around that username. Cool username. As he stated, it does take it over the 250. So there we go. That is the latest information that I have regarding the potential sweeping changes coming to the drone rules again here in the UK. I think, as some people in the chat have also mirrored this sentiment, I think it's a brave thing to do. I think it's a good thing that the UK CAA are taking this step. They're not just hiding behind the fact that the rules have only just changed. We can't have any other tweaks or large changes or small changes, because of course we don't know what those are going to form. We don't know if the DFT are even going to agree with their recommendations from that point of view. I would hope they would, personally. But yes, I will keep you informed fully of any changes that we have from this side of things. I do actually have one more clip to play out actually very quickly, which I almost forgot to do regarding A2. So we'll just listen to this final clip. Our next topic surrounds A2 CofC holders, who of course will be impacted from this, but from the point of view, of course, that I'm an A2 CofC holder. I took mine quite early on. Obviously, you'd expect as a YouTuber, you know, how did I pass my A2 CofC was a nice clicky video for me to put up. And I've been looking forward to, therefore, class marking drones coming onto the market to give me some more benefits as far as separation distances are concerned, etc. Are there any plans, or is there anything that you can say as far as whether or not A2 CofC holders who have taken their tests and passed, have their certificates, will be given any kind of extension to marry up with the new potential with the potential new class marking scheme?
Yeah, it's a good question. Currently, there are no plans. You know, the A2 today offers certain privileges anyway, regardless of class marked. So it's not wasted money, as it were. You can do stuff. You
Yes,
can do,
indeed.
if you didn't have it today already. I think, despite there being no plans now to change anything there, everything for the open category is up for review. I think it's also important, specifically around the A2 and any competence requirement, to look at the why we have renewals. And the why is usually skill fade or knowledge fade. So I think it's really important. This comes back to the CAA. Our main thing is safety. Perhaps 5 years is long enough until we need to do a knowledge fade renewal or skill fade renewal, as it were.
Yes, and we've seen things like the Flyer ID test update and grow for as you're saying, safety reasons, and therefore again what we put A2 CofC holders through in a couple more years' time because of the review may be different as well. So the A2
Absolutely.
certificate itself may change. So yeah, that was an interesting one. I'm glad I remembered to play that last part out. It's going to have a little stream deck here, which gives me all of my videos I need to play. It's very warm today, so I think one slight audio issue and me almost forgetting to play out the lesser interesting part of the A2 CofC renewal, because it is a question that a few of you have asked, so I thought I would ask it. Isn't bad, is it, frankly? So there we go. As I say, thank you very much all for joining us this evening. We had a fantastic crowd in. Can you all do me one huge favour, please? Could we all just hit the like button on your way out this evening? I'd really like to get that up much closer to the 100 likes mark. It does help promote the video. The algorithm likes to see the like button being hit. I'm seeing you all starting to hit it now. Thank you very much. But yeah, I will see you next time on Geeks Vana. We've got some very interesting videos coming up very soon. Lots of stuff in the edit. Lots of really big projects we're working on as well. So yeah, keep an eye out on the channel, frankly. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.